At this point, we're all painfully aware that McConnell froze again, and Feinstein had to be reminded to say aye when casting her vote for the military budget.
Yeah, just say aye.
Okay, just aye.
And then, to make matters worse, McConnell gets a reasonably clean bill of health.
I've practiced medicine for 25 years, and it doesn't look like dehydration to me. It looks like a focal neurologic event. That doesn't mean it's incapacitating, doesn't mean he can't serve.
I'm qualified to assess why Mitch McConnell has lost 20 seconds twice.
Trust the doctor's evaluation.
Now, the latter is particularly preposterous, but since none of us have direct medical access to any of the octogenarians, it's difficult to say whether we are being taken for a manufactured ride, simply because we won't know any better. Also, McConnell and Feinstein aren't the only ones who are operating beyond the occupational expiration date. Opposing to other professions with mandatory retirement ages, politicians have no such limitation. The root for this is anchored in a Supreme Court decision that dates back to 1995. At that time, Arkansas attempted to deny ballot access to prospective U.S. representatives who had already served 3 terms, and prospective U.S. senators who had already served 2 terms. The case was argued at Supreme Court level in U.S. Term Limits, Inc. versus Thornton. The courts at that point ruled that the framers could have created term limits for lawmakers in Congress, but chose not to, suggesting that they did not intend for term limits to be part of the Constitution. Yet, of course, once again, it's the framers, and somehow we are really stuck in the past in this country, unable and unwilling to evolve, particularly at Supreme Court level. And to change that, we actually need politicians to vote against their own interests, but in the interest of the public. But the question then becomes, do we actually care about the ages of our elected representatives? Roberts and Wallach examined that very question. They found that people tend to see younger candidates as less experienced, less qualified, and less conservative than older candidates. This is really no surprise here, but it's good to have that validated. However, they found differences in people's willingness to support a younger candidate more so than an older candidate. In fact, when looking at patterns of approval in Congress, people reported more negative ratings for older members of Congress rather than the younger ones. But, of course, the overrepresentation of older voices in Washington reflects a structural factor, likely that incumbency favors the success of older politicians rather than the demands of the electorate. Now, a few final points before we get out of here, and an important question. Number 1, career politicians are, over time, conditioned. Lobbyists and industry pressure, coupled with Citizens United, results in a predictable public representatives. Except, of course, the predictability will almost always fall in favor of those who write the biggest checks. So, number 2, even if a politician recognized their own limits, wanting to potentially retire, it is not unthinkable that various industries, represented through lobbyists, want them to run again. After all, it costs time and money to condition the individual politician to do what the industry needs. The question that each politician must be asked when they come up for election or re-election is simply this: will you support a constitutional amendment introducing mandatory retirement ages for lawmakers at all levels? It's a simple yes or no question. And any politician leading with anything but a yes or no and perhaps an adjacent explanation, but produces an evasive answer, as we have come to know them to do, is simply unfit for office.